Good morning, welcome to the Saturday Grove. I've got a question for you. Have you ever noticed that some people just seem to have it? I don't even know what it is. I've never ever been able to define it. They could be a Christian, they could be a Buddhist, they could be a magician, anyone. They might, an atheist. But sometimes they have it. And every now and again, you meet someone and you walk away thinking, there's something about them. And I was reading, where is it? Here it is. Great little book. Just say reading, I just let it open. 365 day down. Wonderful book. And I just open it up, see what was waiting there for me. And it talks about humanity, not as separate groups, but as one endless journey. I love that. An endless procession of souls. Some further on, some just beginning their journey, some stopping for a rest, and some getting, well, completely lost. But we're all traveling. And I found myself really wondering, when did we stop walking together? Because if you spend any time around spiritual people, by that I mean druids, magicians, witches, Christians, Buddhists, New Agers, therapists, anyone that has a religious, spiritual practice of any form, you notice something. Every group seems convinced that they're on the best route. Theirs is the best path, if not the only path. And you've probably noticed, people go, oh, look at those silly Christians. Oh, those fluffy New Ages. What do we used to call them? Crystal lickers. Oh, those arrogant occultists, those atheists. Oh, those blooming druids think they own Stonehenge. Oh, ceremonial. But everybody seems to have another group that they like hating upon. They quietly smile at or sometimes just take the absolute what out of. And I caught myself thinking, that's really odd. Because we're all genuinely searching for truth. And shouldn't finding another traveller make us happy? I was always like, well, I mean, I wasn't always like this. In my younger years, oh, my life, I had my moments, don't we all? Where I was exploring Satanism, Wicca, shamanism, ceremonial magic. I was enthusiastic. I was absolutely convinced I probably knew more than I actually did. Now I know less now than I did then. And I suspect that it's a rite of passage of most young people exploring that spirituality. They become inflamed with it, so to speak. You read a few books, you learn a few correspondences. Oh, I've got my first cloak, my ritual robe, and I got a stick, and I'm going to wave it around like a wand. And suddenly you're convinced the universe has handed you the keys to creation. Fortunately, life really has a wonderful habit of just kind of gently sanding those edges off. For me, I think that really happened when I stepped into Druidry, not because Druidry told me I was wrong. It gave me kind of enough space to begin listening instead of performing, to actually observe and be open to rather than closed. Because the moment you go, my path's the only path and they're all wrong, you are so limiting your understanding and experience of the world. But when I think about it, that seed was probably planted before that. Back in my early 20s, what I would describe it as a spiritual wobble. By that I mean the whole foundations of what I thought came crumbling down. Those moments where everything you built your worldview on suddenly goes whoa, beneath you. And it was definitely one of those moments. I spoke about it in other talks, and through a rather strange change of events, I found myself talking to a vicar called David. And now here's the interesting bit. I was like ex-Satanist pagan magician type person, and he was definitely a dog-collared Christian of the C of E. But he never once tried to turn me into a Christian. Never. He listened, he asked questions, he wanted to know what interested me. He knew my fascination in magic and mysticism and the deeper questions. And instead of telling me to stop, that path was wrong, he lent me some books. And in those books, it wasn't the Christianity I'd been taught in school or even in the church. Not the sort that spends all its time telling you who's in and who's out. These were books about mysticism, contemplation, silence, the inner life. It's the same stuff I'd been learning and studying since I was about 11 and 12. Books that made me realize something I'd never really considered before. Perhaps wisdom doesn't belong to anyone. Perhaps it simply appears wherever people are genuinely looking. And I don't think David realized it at the time, but that whole 6 or 7 weeks, couple of months it was, that conversation unfolded between him and us. It changed my life. Not because I became a Christian. I didn't. That's something I explored later on and decided not. But I still grew from it. I was still open enough to allow it to teach me what it taught me. Um, and I didn't stop being interested in magic. It was quite the opposite. It made me realize something that's become stronger with every passing year, that truth, wisdom, insight, true power, call it what you like, has an extraordinary habit of appearing in places we're told not to look. Maybe, just maybe, the first magical act is actually learning to recognize it. And, one of the things I've learned over the years, that wisdom and magic often turns up in ordinary clothes. When I when I was younger, I think, when we're all younger, but when I was younger, I was looking for spectacle, grand gestures, powerful people. I was fascinated by ceremonial magic, symbolism, strange books, psychology, hypnosis. I loved all of it. And I mean, absolutely loved it. I remember reading A. Waite's Book of Ceremonial Magic as a youngster. I was 11. It was full of the sacred names, the symbols, the swords, the circles, just the whole lot. Did I sit there analysing it academically? No. I was 11 or 12. I was out under bridges drawing magical circles in chalk on the concrete because I wanted to experience it. I wasn't collecting information. I was trying to touch something. And looking back now, not because I think that young lad was silly or misguided. Actually, I think younger me understood something rather important, and it knew that magic was never supposed to stay inside the books. It had to be lived. The form changes, the understanding changes, but that longing to encounter something greater than yourself, I hope and I trust I am never going to lose that. And let's face it, every day we wake up, we're experiencing that. So it'd be difficult, Um, But here's the interesting thing. As I grew older, I stopped being impressed by people's big claims. The titles mattered less, the traditions mattered less, not in a disrespectful way, but the labels mattered less. I became much more interested in something else: presence. And some people simply seem settled, not passive, not asleep, just deeply at home in themselves. I've met them in churches, I've met them in groves, I've met them in some strange places. But I've met them in pubs. And every single time I recognize that scent, that different language, that same fragrance. Many years ago, I used to spend quite a lot of time at the Rollright Stones. I knew Pauline, whose family I believe owned them back then. She looked after the site. And she often let me stay there. For those of you who know it, there's a little brick hut there, or used to be. I haven't been for a while. And she used to let me stop there. One day we were chatting away, and a gentleman comes walking around the corner, and I remember now, Pauline's face lit up. She went, "Oh, it's Mr. Smiles." It wasn't actually his name, and to this day I don't know his name or who he was. It's simply the name she'd given him. It was a nickname, Mr. Smiles. And he smiled. He said, "Oh, hello," and I got introduced and said something I'll never forget. I'm here to charge my batteries. And he wasn't talking AA batteries. He meant his batteries, his spiritual, his inner life. And he wandered off into the stones, sat there for an hour, came back, smiled, said goodbye, and wandered off again. To this day, all I know is he was a musician of some sort. That was it. I don't think Pauline knew anymore. There were no lectures, no robes, no dramatic rituals, no great big mystical speech, nothing. But I remember watching him. I remember thinking, wherever he's at, whatever that light is, and there was a light that shined in his eyes, I want to be there. Not because I wanted to become him, but because there was something about his way of being, He wasn't trying to convince anyone of anything. He wasn't performing spirituality. He wasn't dressing up in fancy costumes and making AI generated backgrounds to make himself look amazing. He wasn't trying to impress. Well, we didn't have AI then. So he simply carried something um, that I think I'd begun to recognize by that point. I still don't even know what path he followed, if he followed any. I don't know what books he read. I don't know what he believed. And you know what? That no longer seems important because the older I get, the less interested I become in what people call themselves and the more interested I become in what they radiate. It's made me wonder whether we've been asking the wrong questions all along. Instead of asking, what do you believe? Perhaps we should be asking, what kind of person is your path helping you become? Slightly harder, trickier question because beliefs are easy. Identity is easy. Joining a group is easy. Buying a book is easy. Trust me, I have a bit of an issue with that. I have rather a lot. Terminology is wearing jewelry. Woo! Look, it's all easy, but becoming quietly kind, being transformed within, becoming deeply present, becoming somebody who's very present leaves other people feeling more alive. Now, that for me is the real work. Another thing pops to mind. Always makes you smile. I was at a Beltane. It's a beautiful memory. You have those memories that are just crazy but beautiful. I was at a Beltane camp many years ago, and we'd chosen a huge branch of a tree for the maypole. It really was very, very tall. And we dragged the thing into position. We used to use willow, so as once it had been used, you plant it and it would reroot, which was great. And we dragged it in position, stood it, and it stood very proud. And suddenly someone realised we'd forgot to put the hoop on the top. Um, for most people, that would be like, oh, that's a bit of a problem. Let's take it down. Let's do this. Let's do that. For the Druids, apparently, just an opportunity. There's a guy there called Bob announced that he would climb the pole, which, if you'd ever seen the height of it, wasn't exactly a risk assessment approved activity. Um, so what happened? Did anyone try and talk him out of it? No, of course they didn't. The strongest people grab hold of the pole to steady it. Bob starts shinning his way up, and a field of about 70 druids stood around the bottom and started chanting the Arwen at full volume. It was beautiful. The most random kind of potentially life endangering moment, but there was such beauty and magic in it. It was gorgeous. And so we were there as though, we were collectively arming Bob up the pole, like our energy and our voices were lifting him, carrying him safe to the top and safe back down. And it still brings me joy. Think of that. Because from the outside, people would be if you're walking your dog past that field, you go, what the bloody hell's going on there? But from the inside, it wasn't a performance. It wasn't showing off. It was a shared intention, shared encouragement, a community saying, we are with you. And that I think's a magic too. Not because chanting defies gravity, although that would be something, but because something happens within us when we genuinely stand together. And the further on down this path, this journey that we're all treading together, the less interested I'm becoming trying to answer the question of, when I think about all the different paths, traditions, beliefs, religions, everything, who's right? It's not an interesting question. It's an old, dead question. The question that now fascinates me is, what's happening to you? Because that is where the magic is. It's not in a book, it's not in the ritual, it's not in the tradition, it's not in the belief. It's in what happens within the person. I've often thought and said that magic has to leave the circle. If your magic only works in a robe, it's probably not actually really very magical. If it only works with incense and burning candles lit, or when Mercury is in retrograde, then perhaps we've mistaken the doorway for the destination. Magic has to work on the production line, in the factory. It has to work in the supermarket. It has to work when you're stuck in traffic. It has to work when somebody cuts you up at the roundabout. And it has to work when somebody says something that really winds you up or angers you, because that's where the real work begins. It's not when everything's perfect, not when life's being life. years ago, I thought the magical act was casting the circle. And I think nowadays the magical act is noticing. It's observing, noticing when my ego wants to be right, noticing when I want my path to be better than yours, noticing when I quietly dismiss somebody because they don't use the same language I do. It's extraordinary how subtle that can be. It's not always arrogance. Sometimes it's simply habit. Sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. I mean, one of the greatest gifts Druidry ever gave me wasn't another ritual, wasn't another festival, it wasn't another myth. God, there's plenty of them. It was balance. Slowly, slowly, over the years of study and practice, it rubbed the rough edges off. Don't get me wrong, there's still some there. There's still probably quite a lot there. But not by telling me I was wrong, simply by keeping me in relationship with people, different people. People who saw the world differently, who challenged me simply by existing. And I think every genuine path does that if we let it. Slowly wears away the illusion that we are the center of the universe, which brings me back to that page in the 365 Days Tao book, the one I showed you at the beginning. The image of humanity walking together. Some people are running, some are crawling, some have wandered into the woods, some have stopped to admire the view. Some have taken what looks like a completely different road. But perhaps they're all still part of the same great journey. And that thought brings me enormous peace. It means I don't have to defend my path. I've always said, if you have to defend your path, you don't truly believe in it. If your faith in what your journey is and your path is so 100%, and someone says something against it, it's like, it's whatever, I know this is right for me. But that's the key thing. It's right for you. And all you have to do is walk it. All I have to do is simply walk it. People, I have been asked, over the years, what is a magician? And obviously I used to be a performance magician as well. But one way or another, I've been asked that question so many times. And when I was younger, I'd have probably talked about ritual and symbolism and altered states of consciousness. Great things. These days, I think I'd answer very differently. A magician is someone who knows the way of the inner worlds and learns to use that knowledge for their own transformation and the growth of transformation of others. And it should always be done in service of others. Even our own work, our own growth and transformation, we should be striving to become better versions of ourselves so we can better serve the one, the universe, humanity, and all of this. We shouldn't be somebody who knows the most correspondences or somebody with the biggest library or who can intellectually pull apart some book or other and reference this, that, and the other. Not somebody with the most impressive collection of ritual tools, press a button, the walls open up, and there they are, like a James Bond movie. Uh, someone who, someone whose understanding changes who they are and whose presence helps others become more themselves. And it's a strange paradox. The more I explored magic, the less I've been fussed about appearing magical. The deeper I got into Druidry, the less I felt like I needed to put the costume on. I mean, in Wicca, it's different. There was no costume to wear in the first place. But it's a strange thing. I don't know. Maybe you've noticed that too. The people who carry the deepest wisdom rarely need to advertise it. I mean, Mr. Smiles never told me what his tradition, what he belonged to. David never tried to recruit me. Neither of them needed to. Their lives were already speaking. So perhaps, I don't know, this week, maybe there's like a little magical practice we can try. Not a spell, not a ritual, just an experiment. When you meet people this week, Christian, Muslim, atheist, pagan, scientist, teacher, plumber, or the person serving you behind the till. Try leaving the label behind for a moment. Instead, ask yourself one quiet question. What can this person teach me? What can this person teach me? Not because they're going to become your guru. You're not going to set a shrine up with a photo of them, burn candles and incense to them. Most people never become your gurus. Everybody is also your guru. I remember when I was just studying Siddha Yoga and that revelation that the guru is the teacher, isn't just the holy person that looks all benign and whatever. The teacher is the drunk in the street. The teacher is the couple fighting. The teacher is there everywhere. The one is everywhere and everywhere. We are everywhere and everywhere. And what is out there is the reflection that teaches us more about our true nature and our deeper self. But yeah, most people will never be a teacher to you, a guru to you in a traditional sense. But every now and again, you'll meet another Mr. Smiles or another David, somebody who reminds you without ever trying what it means to be fully human. And when that happens, pay attention. Because I have a feeling that that's how wisdom has always traveled through the world, not through arguments, not through superiority or tribes, but quietly from one human being to another, as we're all walking and journeying along that path. Until next Saturday, walk gently, my beautiful friends. Keep your eyes open and don't just look for magic. Become the sort of person that somebody else remembers years later and says, whatever that was, I want to be there. Much love, many blessings. See you again soon.